Hello, I'm Nora and welcome back to Novels with Nora. Today we're just going to jump right in because this is I want to say 8th installment, but I don't think I've been doing this since January, but this is the August installation of my Buzzwordathon vlogs, which I do every single month, so you should know the gist by now. But we have 2 prompts again this month, which means we're reading 2 books again in this vlog, and I actually have them both picked out and I've already started both of them and can say that we are off to a great start. So the title prompt for this month was with, so we just needed to read a book with the word with in the title, and I am trying to read more of my owned books always, but like especially now because I've been reading a lot of library books, but I have nothing against, love the library obviously, but also want to make sure that I'm reading the books that I own. So I went through all of the books, dog's playing over there. I went through all of the books on my shelves and there's one that fit for each of these prompts. And for with, I have Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. And this follows a trans teen who is escaping this like end of the world death cult, like religious death cult, and ends up at this like LGBTQ youth center who are like fighting against this cult, and they kind of take him in and help to, I don't want to say rehabilitate him, but like help him see that there are things outside of this cult and like options for him that aren't just dying for the cause of this cult. And I am about like 60 pages in so far and I'm really enjoying it. It is just like so full of heart, and like I had listened to like an excerpt of the audiobook to see if that's something I was interested in, which I almost always am, but sometimes narrators don't really jive with me, as I'm sure you can relate to. So I also had to put it on hold, so I was like, let me see if it's even worth waiting for the hold to come in. And I was listening to the audiobook and it's like the first like maybe 3 minutes of the book, and it like sucked me in to the point where as soon as that was over I picked it up and started reading it right then, because even just that short little clip really sucked me in. So I'm having a great time with this and can't wait to get deeper in, because at the part I'm at, he just escaped the cult and got to this youth center. I'm really enjoying all of our characters and everything that's going on so far, so I'm really excited to continue with this. And I think this might also actually count for the cover prompt, which is transportation, because the character here on the cover has wings, which are a form of transportation. So this I think technically would count, but I do have a second book, which I also have started, that counts a little bit more, and that is The Princess and the Scoundrel, which is a Star Wars novel. And as you can see right here, there's like a little spaceship. So this is counting for the transportation prompt. And this I am absolutely loving. I am a huge Star Wars fan and I got into it because of my dad. So it also holds like a lot of nostalgia for me. And I love all of the like canon Star Wars novels. Even like the non-canon ones. I got into the Star Wars novels from a Claudia Gray novel, Lost Stars, and I don't think it's part of like the novelization canon, but I love that book. And so I've really been into the Star Wars novels ever since then. I read that in high school, I want to say, and I just love the Star Wars books so much, especially the audiobooks. When the books are published through Del Rey, which I think most of the Star Wars books are, the audiobooks are so high quality and like have such a high production value. There are sound effects, there's background music, there's just like so much happening in them. They have like so many different narrators. When like the droids talk, they have like the droid noises. When their Wookiees are talking, they have like the Wookiee noises, I guess. They're just so well done and it's just like so wonderful. And this one especially is like even higher quality than what I'm used to, because there's background music near constantly, which is like a bit much because sometimes it's like louder than the dialogue a little bit and like you can't really tell what they're saying if you're not following along, which like does kind of ding a few points from it, but I'm really enjoying it and it really feels very cinematic even just listening to it. I was listening to it while I was journaling yesterday and it just felt like watching a movie even though I wasn't like actually seeing anything. It's just so wonderful. And as you can tell from the cover, this one follows Princess Leia and Han Solo after the events of Return of the Jedi, which is the 3rd movie in the original trilogy, so the last of the original trilogy, and it follows them as they're on Endor and they are engaged and then get married. And so we see them get married, which is so wonderful, and then they are currently on their honeymoon. But knowing Leia, she just wants to get back out there and keep working, because while the Death Star might be destroyed and the Emperor is dead, if you've seen the rest of the movies, so it kind of cheapens it in that way, where it's like the rest of the movies that came out after this, just like, what were they doing? But anyway, so we know that the Empire has been defeated, but there's still like outcroppings of the Empire and the Imperial forces that are still out there and like trying to rise again. And so the Rebel Alliance, the New Republic, are trying to like combat that in now new ways, because it's not so much like genuine like wars, but it's like political machinations that they're dealing with, and that is Leia's foreground. And so she's like really trying to do her best, but also like needing to take time for herself. So her and Han go on this like it's like a cruise, but it's a spaceship, which is super interesting. But she convinces the cruise to like take a different path to go to this planet that she wants to create an alliance with. And when she's there, she realizes that the Empire might be closer at hand than she thought. And I'm really enjoying this because something that the novelizations do so well is that they are just so good at putting so much emotion into these characters. Because like that definitely was done in the movies, but seeing them like grapple with like grief and like losing all of these people in the war, and like Han being a general and like commanding these people to die and like fighting alongside them and watching them die, and then Leia also as a general but like as a princess, she's like sending them to her death and she's become like the face of this rebellion. And so then being like, these people are dying because of me, and like seeing them grapple with that, and also that's their relationship in the movies is like little bits and pieces of it here and there, but like seeing it, that's like that's what this is. It's so wonderful. They are like my original like fictional couple ship. I love them so much. So this is just like so fun for me. It has me giggling and kicking my feet, and I'm just really loving it. And this, as you can tell by the sticker, is a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. So it came with this poster that is the book cover without like the words, and then on the other side is a scene from the movie, and like I'm gonna hang this up. This is so cool. So both of these so far have the ability to become 5 stars. So I'm really looking forward to this. Also, they're so different in like just size. This one is so small. So I'm just having a really great time. They're very different books, but I'm really loving both of them. This one I'm reading mostly with the audiobook because audiobooks from Del Rey with the Star Wars novels are just fantastic. And this I'm just like physically reading, and I'm having a great time. So can't wait to just keep reading. Several updates for you because last night I finished The Princess and the Scoundrel and I loved it. This was a 5-star read, and I feel like it would have been very hard for it to not be a 5-star just because I love these characters so much and I have so much nostalgia connected to them. And something that I think about a lot when I read Star Wars novels is that I feel like it has to be hard for these authors to write in this world, because it's like, I think being an author is hard, being a writer is hard, but like writing in a world where you have limited creative control has to be even more hard and even more difficult, because it's like these characters already exist and they already have background and personality, and this world already exists. So like the rules and everything already exist, and you have to work this story into it. And so I feel like in a way it's both easier and harder. Easier because you don't have to like start from scratch and make everything. Harder because you don't get to start from scratch. So like you might have a whole bunch of ideas, but you have to make it work in the confines of this pre-existing world. And I feel like that has to be hard, especially for something that's so beloved as Star Wars, especially these characters that like have a really big fandom behind them. And I feel like a lot of people, this was like their first like ship in any kind of media. Like this is what we were exposed to first, was Han and Leia. And so I feel like writing this has to be difficult, just like the pressure you would put on yourself to like live up to the expectations of fans, to make these characters feel very true to who they are, but also like show growth still and like have them go through a character arc, but that still lines up with like the rest of the Star Wars media, because like this takes place after Return of the Jedi and there's still 3 movies and a whole bunch of TV shows then after this. So writing this I feel like had to have been difficult, and I don't know how much oversight that Beth Revis, the author, had from like people at Disney and like from Star Wars to know like what narratively was coming after this. And there definitely had to have been something, because there was something mentioned in here that I'll get to that like tied directly into The Last Jedi. And so it is very interesting to think about the process of writing a book like this that exists in like an existing IP, and then trying to like work in your own takes on it, which I think there has to be a lot going on there. But I love this. This perfectly showcases these 2 characters and how like different they are, but how they work so well together. And because it takes place like right after the Death Star explodes and they're still on Endor, and so we get to like see more of Endor and like Wicket and the Ewoks, and like that was wonderful. But then we also got to see these characters in new settings and like on a new world and going on new adventures, and like that was really wonderful. And because they were like on their honeymoon, it was kind of like just them. And so seeing these two work so closely together, because like during like the war, they didn't really work super closely together because Leia was like the face of the rebellion and Han was just like a general. It was just so nice to see them like working so closely together, because this follows them right after they defeat the Empire and they're on Endor. They are getting married. It's very cutesy. We see their whole wedding ceremony and it's so wonderful. And then we are seeing these characters grapple with the fact that while they blew up the Death Star and the Emperor is dead, the Empire itself still exists and there's still like footholds of the Empire in the universe. And so they're trying to find a way to take down all of the last remaining vestiges of the Empire and like convince people that the war is actually over. But then they're also seeing how the Empire was actually kind of like good for some planets, because it brought a lot of like currency and different like job opportunities to a lot of places. So some people are like not necessarily in agreement with what the Empire was doing, but they were Empire sympathizers because the Empire brought opportunities to them, and they don't know that this new republic or this new government from the rebellion can bring that same security to them in the way that the Empire could. And so it's really interesting. We're seeing a lot of characters because they go on this like cruise thing as their honeymoon, where it's like a cruise but it's like a spaceship, which is super interesting. And so they're interacting with all of like the wealthy people who are on this cruise, and they're like seeing how the war was just kind of like a thing that happened in the background for them, and it wasn't something that they were seeing up front, where they like don't necessarily believe that it's over, and like their lives kind of just go on the same, just with like a new ruling class. And I thought that was really interesting. And it also is just such a great exploration of grief, and specifically like Leia's grief, seeing like her whole planet is destroyed. Like home is not a place that she can go back to, and now she's finding home in Han, and that was beautiful. But also like in the movies, we just don't get to see a whole lot of like their inner workings and like their emotions towards everything that's happening, especially Leia when Alderaan gets blown up. And so seeing her kind of like work through that, and how Han is kind of like there for her through it and is like kind of like a shoulder for her to lean on, was just beautiful. And it was just so wonderful. And it also had a lot of great messaging about like art as opposition and art as like resistance, and I really enjoyed that, and how Leia is like the face of this resistance, but also she's just a person and she can't like put all that on herself, and she has to like lean on Han and the rest of the resistance for help. And it was just so wonderful, and like all of those things combined into the Star Wars novel are just so wonderful. And that's why I love reading the Star Wars novels, because they add so much depth to the world and to the characters that I think they're just so worth the read. Now, the thing that I mentioned that ties into The Last Jedi, I think it was The Last Jedi, I'm pretty sure, when they first have like their actual wedding ceremony on Endor, the like ceremony that the Ewoks have them partake in is like these vines come out of like their like big main tree and like wrap around their fingers, and like it's like kind of like a hand fasting ceremony, I think that's what it's called, where like the vines like tie their fingers together around like their ring fingers, and when the vine snaps, it leaves this like gooey like amber sap on their fingers, and it hardens into rings for them. And so they have these like amber rings, but they know that they're not gonna like last forever because it's not like a super solid material. And so throughout the process of what they end up doing here in this book, the rings break, and when they're back on the ship at the end, Han gets Leia a ring, and I'll put it in a picture because it's described. As soon as they were describing it, I was like, I know what ring they're talking about, because Leia wears this ring in The Last Jedi, I think. If she's in I think it's in more than one of the movies, because it's a very noticeable ring, and I noticed it, and I was like, oh my god, I want to find myself like a cosplay like copy of this ring, because I just loved it so much, and it was such like a cool piece of jewelry. And knowing that like that is their wedding ring, it was just so beautiful. And I think it's also super cool then seeing it in the novel, where the author is able to like take something super little, like a costuming choice from the movie, and have it have such significance in the book, because the ring is gold with like these two blue stones, and Han is describing how it has like the gold to like represent like their original rings with the amber, and then it has the two stones, like one for each of them, so even if they're separated, they're like always still connected. Gagged. Like because I loved that ring just on its own. I thought it was like really unique and really pretty, and so seeing all of that meaning behind it, that it was able to just be put in through this one like little passage in this book, was wonderful. But this book follows them again on their honeymoon, and Leia is really grappling with like, she needs to take time off, but also she knows there's so much to be done. And so she convinces the pilot of the ship to like take a different course with Han's help, so that she can go to this world that she thinks something is up with, because she like reached out to them to like be like, we can offer help, we can like get you what you need. And he was like, you should come see our art. And she's like, yeah, I talked about the art, but like it's weird that that's all he would mention. And when they get there, they realize that the Empire still has a foothold on this moon, and so it's the story of like them trying to root out the Empire here, and like what goes on from there. And I just loved it so much. I feel like these Star Wars novels are just so fun, and like they show our characters going on different adventures, but like, and they're high stakes, and like, you know that, but at the same time, you know that the characters are going to be okay because they go on to do things in the movies still. So like, I really enjoyed this. This was a 5-star for me. Like, the characterization of them was just so wonderful, and like they felt so true to the characters in the movies. And I feel like Han especially is really hard to do because he's kind of like snarky and snide, but also like deeply caring, and it captured it perfectly. It was just so wonderful. And the narrators in here, the audiobook, I would 100% recommend. If you're reading a Star Wars novel from Del Rey, 100% would I recommend picking up the audiobook, because this is honestly the most like high quality, well done, like high production value audiobook I've ever read, because it had sound effects through the whole thing. All Star Wars books through Del Rey have sound effects. So like, if a door opens, you hear it. If it, like, there's a spaceship, you hear it. If they go into hyperspace, you hear that. When there's droids, it has like a droid voice talking. When Chewbacca's in there or any other Wookiees, you hear like the Wookiee voice. Like, it's just so wonderful. But this was different because there was background music through the entire thing, which was a little hard to adjust to at first, but once you got used to it, totally fantastic. And it was like the like Star Wars music, so like at big like emotional climaxes in the book, the music would swell, and it was just like truly such a cinematic experience. I loved this so much, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading it. This came out in 2022, and it's been sitting on my shelf since, and I loved it so much, as I'm sure you can tell. Like, I feel like the plot comes secondary to the audiobook quality and just like the characterization in here. Everything about it was just so wonderful, and I finished it. I was like, there's no way it's not a 5-star. Like, even though like comparing it to some of my other 5-stars, there's definitely differences, but like Star Wars novels that are done well are just done so well. And I think especially because I already have such a deep connection to the characters and to the world, that having it in here, and we also see Leia use the Force for the first time, which is super cool, because I can never remember the name of it, the final Star Wars movie, in like that last set of 3, we see Leia like training in the Force, and then she like gets called away to do something else, but we see her in here use Force for the first time on her own, and it was just so wonderful. And like the emotions behind it, everything in this was just so wonderful. And the books are just able to put so much more emotion into the characters than they can in the movie, just because there's so many characters and the world is so sprawling, that having something like this is just so wonderful. I could talk about this forever. I love this book. It was so good. I am so glad to have this poster, because I absolutely will be hanging this up. First of all, the art is just stunning, and like, love it a lot. And this book just now has such great memories tied to it. This is like the ice planet end up on, where everything goes on, and then Endor, where they have their wedding ceremony, and then them and the little like cruise. Everything about this is just beautiful. So super happy to have read that, and really like just cannot wait to hang that up. Like, it amazing, beautiful, fantastic. Cannot say enough good things about it. Obviously, if you're not into Star Wars, you're not going to read that anyway, but like, trust me, it was really good. And like I said, I had several updates because I have made progress in Hell Followed With Us. I am now on page 140, and I'm still really enjoying this. This I'm having such a great time with, and I feel like now that I'm into it, I can give like a better description of it. So this is in this like post-apocalyptic world. That is such a hard word for me to say, where there was this like religious order that truly was like kind of like a cult, but like was very widespread, called the Angels. And they believed that, I'm not really even sure what their belief was, but that like people needed to pay. Like, the non-believers did not deserve to live. And so they created this virus, this disease called the Flood, which just like killed a whole bunch of people, but also turned some of the people into these things called graces, which are just these big monsters that like are like an amalgamation of different people, and like you could see like bones jutting out. It's very much body horror in here. And our main character, Benji, he was part of this cult religious order, and he was in this trial to become the Seraph, I believe is how that's pronounced. I don't have the audiobook, so I'm not sure, where he got injected with a version of the Flood that is turning him into like the salvation for his people, and he's supposed to like bring about salvation for the angels. But the church and the angels only see him as a girl. Still, he is trans, and they only see him as a girl, and so his dad is trying to help him escape. And in the very first chapter, we see his dad get killed, and so then he manages to escape the angels and joins up with the LGBTQ youth center that he ends up with, the ALC, or the ALC as they call it. And they are just this group of teens that are killing angels, and then they use like parts of their body to barter for supplies. He ends up with them, and he is kind of coming to terms with his identity. Because it's an LGBTQ center, he's in a space where he can like explore his trans identity in a way that's like not against his religion anymore. But he's also grappling with like, the religion is really all he's known. So like, seeing these people who hate his people so much, and like he's killing these angels, but like he recognizes all of them. And so it's very interesting. But also because he has this seraph in him, he knows that he's going to transform into like a version of one of the graces that's like so much worse. And a few of the people in the watch who are like the hunters of this group, they know that he is the seraph, and they're kind of just like using him to their own end. They're like, well, he is like the monster created by the angels, we're going to use him against them. And so he agrees because he's like, I'm going to take out as many of them as I can before I turn into this monster that they've made me into. And again, a lot of body horror. As I'm sure you can imagine, lots of conversations about religion and like finding faith outside of an organized religion, which I've been reading a lot about lately, unintentionally. There's also just a lot of exploration of self outside of like the organized religion, and like becoming who you are. And like his dad told him that like he just needs to be good, so he's grappling with like, what does it mean to be good? Can I still like fight and be part of this fight against the angels if I'm still being good? And so there's a lot of really interesting conversations happening here, and I feel like my thoughts will kind of come together more as I finish it, because I still have like over half the novel left. But I'm really enjoying it so far. The writing is very well done. It really sucks me in. Like, it's so atmospheric and so, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but it's just very, I don't want to say entertaining, that feels wrong, but it's just very gripping, that's the word. And it just really keeps me sucked into the story. And there's like a very large cast of characters, because this LGBTQ center has become like a shelter for these teens. And so there's a lot of teens there. And so there's a lot of like personalities clashing and like different characteristics of all these different characters. And it's very interesting to see them all interact and see how Benji interacts with them. And these people who are like the opposite of what his religion taught him was like good. And so it's very fascinating, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really having a great time with it. I am, again, really enjoying it. I'm very much looking forward to just continuing with it. So I'm going to continue reading this today. I kind of want to finish it today, just because I am like, I would say like a third of the way through, but I do think I can finish it today. So I'll either finish it today or tomorrow, and then I will give you my final thoughts. Last night I finished Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, and I really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star read for me. I loved a lot about this, and I think really the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I can see where this author is going to make improvements, and I think they have 2 other books out with another one on the way, so I'm really looking forward to reading more from him. But I can see some places where I'm like, yeah, with like a little bit of experience, his future books are going to be 5 stars for me, because I enjoyed this so much. The world building in here was so unique and so well done and so like fleshed out and just like so in depth, and I really love that. And then like the body horror in here hit the nail on the head. Like, it was so grotesque, but like in the best ways possible. It was so fascinating. And like all of the things that were done were so unique, but also just like so gruesome, but like in a way that it's like, yeah, no, I can see why that's the way we went. And I really enjoyed that. And then all of the characters were just so unique. Again, they all had such varying personalities because they all got like stuck together in this like apocalypse, and they're all trying to work together, but they all have like very differing personalities. And so seeing how they kind of like butt heads but like ultimately understand that they need to work together, I really enjoyed that. A lot of different queer representation and neurodivergent representation, just so wonderful. And just like seeing Benji find himself outside of the oppressive nature of this cult-like religion was really wonderful. And like seeing how he sees himself versus how he knows the world sees him, and the conversations about transness and how he experiences it one way, but he knows that like people looking at him experience him a different way. And like that was super fascinating. I really enjoyed this. I had a very great time with it. I thought it was very gripping and very unique. Like, I really have not read anything like this, and I can't wait to read more of this author's work. And I think like there's 2 books where the covers are like in the same cover style, and then another one that's coming out later this year or next year. I think his the first adult debut. So really looking forward to reading more from him. I did really enjoy this though. I had a very great time with it. I just feel like something was missing for me. I don't know what it was, but like I think it just that where we ended, it feels so different than where we started, which like isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like it took a really long time to get there. And throughout a lot of it, I was just thinking like there's still so much book left to go. Like, I don't know how we're gonna get anywhere that's going to be like a conclusion here. And it did get there and I did enjoy it, but because I was kind of like, I don't want to say lost, but I was feeling like, how are we getting to the end? Like, even when I was in the middle, I was like, I don't really see how we're gonna get there. And like everything that happened needed to happen, and so I enjoyed reading it. I just was kind of like, I feel like a lot is happening, but at the same time we're not moving anywhere, is kind of how it felt. But I did really enjoy this. So like I said, 4 stars. We'll be reading more from this author, and I'm very much looking forward to that. And that brings us to the end of this video. I have read both of the books for Buzzwordathon this month. We had the title challenge completed with Hell Follow With Us, as the title prompt for this month was with, and then the cover prompt completed with The Princess and the Scoundrel, because the cover prompt was transportation, and we had the little spaceship here. So that completes August Buzzwordathon. I have completed 8 months of Buzzwordathon so far, have not missed a month, and do not plan to. But these are the 2 books that we read this month. Very different, literally could not be more different, but I really enjoyed both of them. We had a 5-star and a 4-star. So I would say a great month for Buzzwordathon for me. But again, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in another video again soon. Bye.